Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Join me on today's video where I'll be looking at yet another Specht Sohne watch. We all know which model this is homaging, and if you're not aware, I did do a triple unboxing for these SNS watches, and after which I ordered another model and then one of the new models. So there is a few watches from SNS going to be coming out on this channel. Now this particular SNS, it sells for only around £75 and it has great specifications like a sapphire crystal. It does have somewhat minimal water resistance, which is what is expected, but it also features the Citizen Miyota 8315 movement. As you guys are aware, in the unboxing there was a bit of confusion because SNS on their website state it's 8215. However, we know the 8215 does not hack, but this version definitely does. So I did have a chance to compare this next to an 8315, which I have in my collection. It's from a Citizen. And yeah, they do match up. There's a couple of differences obviously on the movement because this is the aftermarket version, so it has minimal decoration, whereas the one from Citizen does have a bit more decoration on their version. But yeah, definitely the 8315, which makes it more or less exactly the same as a Seiko NH35. Now the fact that this does hack, and it also doesn't have that indirect drive where the second hand seems to be in a free fall position, but this is working as it should. Now you also get 5 different dial colors. I went with the green. You've also got an ice blue, a dark blue, a white and a black. With this particular version, this is going to be matched up very closely to the one I reviewed from Mysterious Code. Of course, it's still going to be miles away from the best one of this kind, which is from 9DAO, which I reviewed a few months ago. I think that is the benchmark to measure all these other homages to. But this one, yeah, it's not too bad. And I have previously criticized SNS, particularly on the BNR homage, where I stated they should step away from these type of designs if they cannot execute them properly, because those watches did look, for a lack of a better word, very scruffy. But this particular version seems to be greatly improved. Let's have a look at the case. You can see the finishing is already much better. You've got soft circular brushing on that bezel. Please ignore that screw. That was me. I tried to mess around with it with a screwdriver, and because they are quite cheap, it just ended up totally breaking off that screw head. It does turn slightly, but I don't think they actually hold the bezel in place. They're just there for aesthetics. And as you can see, they have tried to line them up kind of in an angular fashion to match the design of the watch. But yeah, I just totally destroyed that. But back to the finishing. So you do have a very crisp line now between the brushing on the bezel to that polished highlight or the polished bevel that you see. You also have very consistent and even brushing on the A face, which also then transitions into the secondary polished highlight that you see on the side of the case. And again, while it's not perfect, you can see just slight bits there. It is much better, but the brushing on the side of the case is very smooth. You also have a slight turn on the front of the case, which is more closer to the 9DAO version than the Mysterious Code. But however, there is a massive problem with this watch, which we'll look at just in a short while. The crank rods don't actually feature that polished highlight that we saw on the 9DAO, which I don't expect it to because of the low price point. They do have a fully brushed finish. And the crown is actually very nice to operate because it does use a low torque movement like this Miyota 8315, so you don't get any issue with the small crown. Now, where SNS have upped the game is on the bracelet finishing. You do have these polished center links, and I don't think the polishing is that good though, because they're already full of scratches, and literally every link does have these micro scratchings present. Now, whether that be from cleaning with a cloth or they just ended up coming to me like this is what you are going to see. But if you look at the brushing on the links, you can see it's a lot more uniform. It looks to be machine brushed, which is why you get such a consistent finish. Now, you've also got these rather large bevels on the side of the bracelet. Really nice. It gives you the effect that the actual link is fully chamfered, but it isn't. If you take a look on the side, it is still very flat, and usually you expect the bevel or chamfer to be between where the two surfaces meet on that right angle, but they haven't shaved that side, they haven't carved that side. What they've done, they've put the bevel on the actual top side of the link. Now, that means you still get some edginess on the inside of the links, but yeah, it does look much better for sure. And for £75, the Mysterious Code does not have this, and this is probably the only one that has this level of feature on there. But coming back to this massive issue now, just take a look at these links. If you notice, I sat the watch on its clasp because this is how far this watch actually conforms. The bracelet links do not articulate at all. One of the key things they have missed here is where you take a look at the links, they need to have a cut at the bottom. They need to be beveled there so the links can actually articulate. So this is very limiting on what wrist it can fit. Now, I went on the AliExpress store. I did see a really helpful comment. from a customer who stated that if anyone has a wrist size smaller than about 7.25 to 7.5 inches, then forget about it, because this watch just won't fit, because this watch is just too stiff. So while, you know, aesthetically they have made the bracelet much better, functionally this is a massive drawback. And as you guys know, my wrist size is 6.5 inches, so I'll be interested to see or show you guys how this fits on mine. So aside from the case, let's take a look at the dial a bit closer. Now this dial is again closer to the mysterious code. It's nowhere near the quality of the 9 dial. You can see the pattern is still present, but they are quite small, the different textures that you got here. So the cubes and the lines, again, similar to the mysterious code. You also got a beveled date frame applied to the date window, which is a nice touch. You also got the usual applied hour markers, which are highly polished. You also got the polished hands, and again, like we saw on the others, if you take a closer look at the handset, you can see scratches and debris and just really poor overall handling and quality that you see. Now there is one major issue when we take a look at the 12 o'clock. You can just see the baton on the right is slightly lower than the baton on the left, so a clear quality issue there. Again, not spotted by anybody who's trying to put this watch together, so that for me just isn't good enough. And again, for £75, it's not something we should expect, because AliExpress is always excelling. We can see so many other brands that are for £75 or cheaper, they don't have these issues. Now there's also another thing about the dial which isn't to my particular taste or liking. Again, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it does give off a metallic hue. Which, if we take a look at some of the other models, they don't necessarily give us that metallic hue, which gives you quite a bit of glare on the dial, and I'm not a fan of this metallic finish. Right, it just really looks just a bit cheaper than it should. If they went for more of a matte effect to the dial and just focusing more on the depth of the dial, it would have been much better. Now you've also got printed features like the printed text below the 12. They've chosen to put the automatic just below that printed text, so you've got nothing at the bottom of the dial. You also got printed minute track. Now that minute track sits on these concentric circles, which they are a little better than we saw on the GMT PRX homage. You can't actually see them, so there's been an attempt to make this dial just a bit better than what they've done on some of the other models. Now the lume is great as always. That's something which I can report back that they have been very consistent on. I've looked at 3 or 4 models now, and they all have the same level of lume, and they don't want to really cut costs on that corner, which is fine, but they just need to really focus on everything else around it. So this is definitely a mixed bag. So many different things to think about with this watch. We can already rule out if you've got a smaller wrist, don't even bother. Second thing, the finishing is good, definitely up to scratch, but you know, that function of the bracelet is definitely going to get in the way of that too, and it's definitely going to be a deal breaker. I think everything else with regards to the dial, that is subjective. That QC failure there, you know what, it is going to be present on some, and there's going to be others where it won't be present. That's just the nature of, you know, buying from where we buy these watches from, and with this particular style as well, and at this particular cost. Now on wrist, while from the outset it does look like it's fitting okay, but there is a huge gap on the sides. Of course, you don't really feel much of the bracelet holding on. I think the only part that is really holding on to my wrist is I can feel tightness around the clasp, you know, where the butterfly clasp is. But other than that, yeah, it's not really a great fit. It is doable, only if you really wanted the watch, and of course, you know, you want the budget version. You don't really want to spend what 9 DAO are asking, then I'd say perhaps chance it, but your wrist does need to be just over that 6.5 inches for it to be somewhat wearable. I think it's a good attempt. It's probably the best budget version. However, some clear issues that you can see, as I've spoken about. Even the QC issue aside, I don't mind that too much because it is so inconsistent. The chances are your one probably will be okay, but there will be a small chance of, you know, issues like this coming through. The lume is good. What I particularly like is the movement used, the Miyota 8315. It's not so common. There's not a lot of brands using that, so it's good that they gave us that movement. But yeah, as I said, a bit of a mixed bag. I wouldn't get it, of course, because, you know, because of my wrist size and that bracelet. I still think they've got quite a way to go, and I still think that perhaps stick to more simplistic watches, something that you really, there isn't much to actually go wrong on. And again, you know, this is another proof there, because this bracelet is a bit complicated. They've not done it well enough, so it rules out quite a large market which can actually buy these watches. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.